because then that would be a reasonable explanation for that. I hope that first part got in there because otherwise I'm going to be seeming like I'm just chatting with myself, and I would rather not that happen. All right, we are live on Facebook. We are live on Twitch TV. So, time to get things going. It is Monday, and what a Monday it has been so far. Glad to be at this point of the day. I'm Chief Meteorologist Austin Onick. Let me just make certain the camera's where it needs to be. So far, so good. Again, for the early evening hours, we're just not seeing a lot of major problems out there. It was a pleasant day today. A lot of dry air in place. We'll talk more about the rest of the forecast coming up here in just a little bit. If you're on Twitch TV, again, drop us a note and just say hi for a little bit. Likewise, if you're on Facebook, give us an idea as to where you're from and anything that might be going on in your neck of the woods weather-wise. We cover the area. For those of you who are not familiar with this, especially for those of you on Twitch TV tuning in, again, this is Southeast Tennessee, North Georgia, Northeast Alabama, and the westernmost county in North Carolina. That's the News 12 viewing area. So that right there is where we cover. But we do as much as we can to make certain that we do a lot more regarding weather around the country and what's happening around the world when it comes to climate and other things that we can do when it comes to recycling and all sorts of things like that. So stay tuned for more on that. Let's go ahead and get started for tonight. Let's go ahead and do the almanac page real quick because it was a beautiful day today. Humidity was quite low, looking at some repeated chances of that happening over the course of the next several days. And the numbers today were just beyond beautiful. Temperatures just below normal for this time of the year. 82 the high, 84 normal, 58 the low, 63 normal. So a below normal day. No problem at all. We'll take that with not a concern out there. 98, the record high that hasn't been broken since before my grandfather was born, believe it or not. And 47, the record low. When you got record lows that high, you know you're still in summertime. We're about to change seasons too. More on that in just a little bit. We're so far behind for the month by about 2 1/3 inches. Could definitely use some more rainfall out there if at all possible. On the astronomical side of things, the morning's coming a lot later and the evening sunset's coming a lot later as we see sunrise tomorrow morning at 7:27, sunset tomorrow night at 7:43. And then the moon is at 21% waxing crescent, so it's just beginning to be visible in the west. Beautiful moon set tonight over the Tennessee River as I made my way back to the station. Moonrise will be tomorrow about noon, and moon set will be tomorrow night at just before about midnight, so hopefully we'll be able to include that on News at 11 coming up on Tuesday. We'll see how well that goes there. Let's take a look at what we saw outside or what somebody else saw outside today. Thank you, News 12 viewer Cindy Kennan, for an interesting view of some of the fauna around the area. In her note, she includes a note to Chip Chapman, our morning weather guy, and asking him if this means that regular high temperatures are going to be in the 60s. Not familiar with that particular branch of weather lore, but if it's a good sign that winter is on the way, I'm all for it because I could use a little bit less pollen in the air if at all possible. Ragweed is nothing to be messed around with when there's tons of it around the area. So thank you very much, Cindy Kennan, for that interesting view there of some of the local caterpillars. Yeah, sure. Let's do the outdoors forecast. I was aiming for the cameras, but there you go. Good conditions on Tuesday for catching a fish. Light northeasterly winds. No sign of any rainfall coming up. So very quiet in and around the area there. Here's where I was going. If you've got a picture of pink caterpillars or otherwise, send them in to us. Drop them to the comments section of our Facebook, X, or Instagram page. Give us an idea as to what you were looking at. You can remain anonymous if you want to, or just email them to us at pictures@wdef.com. Would love to see what you're seeing out there. Let's take a look around the area from Island Cove Marina and Resort. Beautiful, hardly a cloud in the sky, a little bit of a spider web set up there from Sylvester the Spider hanging out in various areas. Lee Point, hopefully a nice sunset back to the west tonight. Traffic on 153 humidity moving along quite nicely. Beautiful sunset earlier tonight on our downtown camera from the Bailey's Heating and Air camera. I should have mentioned on Lee Point, that is the Plainview outdoor advertising camera, just to make certain everybody's paying attention there. From the News 12 studios in downtown Chattanooga, looking over the northwest flank of Lookout Mountain on the veteran-owned Patriot Concrete camera. Traffic on the from Chattanooga Red Wolf Stadium, that back up from 75 north to 24 west as construction goes on. Easily visible from the Tomahawk crane and rigging camera. And last but not least, from downtown, from the Speedy's Total Car Care camera at the Chattanooga Theater Center overlooking Coolidge Park. Few folks out and about for tonight. Not too much going on around the climbing wall, and not much traffic going on across the bridge at this time, so beautiful conditions downtown. Here's the really neat thing about how things are working out with the temperatures and the dew points. The dew point temperature, the farther the dew point temperature is away from the air temperature, that gap in there shows some very dry air. Now, if the dew point temperature was much closer to the air temperature, that would be a lot more moisture being held in the atmosphere and a lot more humid and a lot more uncomfortable. But because the dew point temperature is so low, it's very comfortable out there. There's not a lot of humidity being held in the air. Those northwesterly breezes doing a very good job of making certain that everything stayed very nice and dry. Temperatures right before the top of the hour, some 50s over toward Monteagle, lower 60s to the east of Chattanooga and the higher elevations, upper 60s throughout the Tennessee River Valley. And again, that dew point temperature out there, marvelous feeling. It is coming up a little bit as per usual in the evening hours when the moisture starts to kind of collect and condensate a little bit, but still some very nice numbers, nowhere close to the very sultry conditions that we can get at this time of the day or this time of the year, being in this temperate rainforest area that we are. Very comfortable, no problems at all being seen, so hopefully it stays that way. For right now, there's barely anything anywhere when it comes to anything involving precipitation, hardly any clouds. The atmosphere boiling up earlier created those clouds, and you can see them disappearing as the sun sets on this visible satellite picture out there. We have little, if anything, going on even close to the area where it comes to rainfall. You got to go all the way back to West Virginia to get anything in the way of a shower even close to us, east of Charleston, west of D.C., and then back to the north of that. A lot of activity going on in the wake of what was Hurricane Lee, that now making its way away from the area and heading up to the north and to the east. Not a problem for us anymore. What's going on in the tropics? Well, we'll talk about that coming up here in just a little while. Let's go ahead and jump into what's going on. We've got a couple of fronts off the east coast for the most part, and high pressure is making its way down from Canada, essentially going from the Gulf all the way up to Hudson Bay. So a very nice blocking ridge here, escorting in some drier, cooler conditions. That's what's keeping the temperatures just below normal and very comfortable out there. So for right now, looking good, and any chance of anything really making its way in from the coast, the west coast area, not that much going on at this point in time. But going to be interesting to see what happens right in here as this storm system slows down, runs out of energy, becomes stationary, and the winds on either side of that may start some spin taking place. So we may see a new storm system ready to head up the East Coast in the next day or two. Again, it doesn't look like too much is going to be bothering us, but it is something that needs to be paid attention to if you are going to be traveling. So tomorrow morning, jackets at the bus stop, maybe not quite a bad idea as numbers drop into the lower 50s across much of the area. Mostly clear skies without cloud cover acting as a blanket down toward the surface. Then that means without those clouds, the heat of the day just radiates upwards and away from us, and that cools things off quite nicely. Comfortable tomorrow, back in the low 80s briefly with a few clouds. Mostly clear, maybe some valley fog and some clouds east of Chattanooga down into northwest Georgia and northeast Alabama. Cool, but not quite as cool as it's expected to be Tuesday morning. Lower 80s, a few more clouds coming on through. Some more clouds sticking around for early Thursday morning, and then temperatures remain back quite nice into early Thursday afternoon, back in the lower 80s. No sign of any rainfall anytime soon. And as of right now, the next best chance of getting anything in here in the way of rainfall is going to be coming up through the rest of this week. Dry expected into Friday. And then as we go into the weekend, maybe the possibility of something developing on the East Coast. More on that in just a second. And then toward about Sunday into next Monday, that's where we start to see our first chance of anything involving rain. And we're not talking about anything really huge amounts coming on through. At best, Tuesday and Wednesday will be our best chance of any rain. And that's going to be a widely isolated possibility out there. Not seeing any severe weather potential out across the area. And whatever that area of low pressure is that develops well back to our north, that's where we see again the potential for some more showers and thunderstorms. Could be more potent up there, assuming there's enough moisture from the Great Lakes. But for right now, hardly anything really expected around our area through the time we go through Monday and into and around Tuesday. So that's as good as it gets for rainfall. If you've got a garden, the garden hose, the bucket is going to come in very handy for anything involving transporting moisture. And we're still in the growing season. Frost doesn't happen down here for a while. So if you want to take care of your plants and it gets a little thirsty out there, something to think about. The first day of autumn is coming up. We'll talk more about the time on that in just a little bit, but we're just almost less than a week until the change in seasons. Tomorrow, it's not an official holiday, kind of, sort of. It's just a fun thing to throw up there. Tomorrow is International Talk Like a Pirate Day, to where you can throw in a lot of R's and walk the planks and landlubbers and stuff like that. It's just a neat thing to do, and it's just a neat little holiday that I like to remind people about. So tomorrow, again, if you have a presentation at work or at school, you want to throw in something like "R mateys," then now's your chance to do that. This is going to be the best day to celebrate pirates and just the culture of that. So again, haven't seen the new One Piece series. I believe that's on one of the streaming services. I can't remember which one at this point in time, but it'd be really neat to be able to see that. Temperatures over the next few days remaining just below normal, and then into next week, there's our next chance of showers, maybe even a rumble of thunder, but that's all that we've got. Nothing else happening, and not really expecting to see much of anything coming on through for the near future. So looking good through the first couple of days of autumn. Last day of summer, Friday, is going to seem a little warmer, but still below normal, so not too bad out there. Nice across the area. Friday night football looks to be excellent, so looking good for the rest of the week, and better chance of rainfall more than a week away. So that's a decent amount of time out across the area for that to give us any more rainfall. We love countdowns. I love them. I love passing them along to people, especially at this time of the year when summer gets to be a little bit more oppressive than anything else. So it's nice to be reminded that the change in seasons is out there. And our countdown to autumn clock, which I love to haul out at this time of the year, 4 days and change until the changeover, which happens at about 2:45 a.m. Saturday the 23rd. So we're almost there, getting close to that time frame where we change things over a little bit. There's also another countdown that I would love to remind you about at this point. Even though we technically don't have many earthquakes here as much as you would expect on the San Andreas or even the New Madrid fault line, it's important to know more about what to do when an earthquake happens, even for students. This is a kind of a nice little thing to take a look at to make certain we're more prepared for anything that could happen. And this is a website and a practice coming up that you get to be able to participate in. It's called the Great Central U.S. Shakeout, or just basically the U.S. Shakeout, to where in 31 days on October the 18th, or 19th, pardon me, your opportunity to stop, drop, and to cover up with whatever you've got handy when the alert comes down, when the time frame happens, and to be able to talk this up with other members of your family, your business, your place of worship, to make certain that you are ready to go when something happens, if something happens. And again, this is not a great area for earthquakes, but they can happen in various places, and some of those fault lines can sneak up on you depending on how things go. I didn't even know there was one back in northeast Kansas along what was called the Nemaha Ridge Fault, which went right underneath a reservoir dam by Manhattan, Kansas. So kind of neat to be able to hear stuff like that. But again, this is coming up October 19th. If you would like to participate, I would highly recommend it. Talk it up, get people to know more about this. Go to shakeout.org and find out more about what's going on and how you can participate in what is happening there. All right. Speaking of counting down to the edge end of seasons, whatever, midway point between the beginning and the end of hurricane season, we just passed that point about a week ago, which means we've got an entire other half of the hurricane season. Granted, yes, it'll be diminishing in activity and number of storms, but now is the time to make certain you pay attention to what is going on, because if you're traveling, this is going to come in very handy to know that we still have a great deal of activity to get through. Speaking of which, this is where it gets interesting, because that front we told you about, you can see the cloud cover along that front stretching out here. The National Hurricane Center, in their outlooks, is already showing the potential of some problems developing where an area of low pressure may develop right there. We'll get back to that in just a little bit. Across the entire Atlantic basin, Nigel is a Category 1 hurricane. According to the information that we have from several sources, National Hurricane Center, etc., it's a good possibility that this could undergo rapid intensification, and we could see a Category 3 storm coming up from Nigel as it wanders out. It's not a threat to the United States, but it's something to watch. Lee, what's left of it, is way up north, possibly impacting Iceland and the Western European area. And the same thing for Margot. If this thing catches the jet stream, it could wander its way back over toward Western Europe as well. But Margot is basically a remnant low. It's a weak tropical storm, winds of about 40 miles an hour. If conditions are right, yes, this could regenerate, but for right now, it's expected to remain kind of a tropical depression. Two things to take a look at here. Number one, this large area here where an area of low pressure has made its way off of the coast of Africa, and that is going to be making its way paralleling Nigel and Lee's course. Now, whether or not that makes its way all the way to the Caribbean like Lee almost did, or takes that sharp right turn as Lee and what Nigel appears to be doing, this is what we have to watch at this point. Taking a look over toward the East Coast, this is where things really start to get interesting, because there's not much expected now. Remember, that's just a stretched out front, and the low pressure area is expected to develop along that front and then eventually make its way back up right along the coastline. Remember, air around low pressure rotates counterclockwise, so as this goes north, it's possible that this system could shove a bunch of moisture onshore, waves and rainfall. So there is a possibility that we could be looking at very heavy rain, gusty winds, not great beach weather. And then as that storm system tracks up the East Coast, if it hugs the coast just perfectly, we could see some interesting situations shaping up to where, again, the moisture coming in from off of the coast could do a very good job of inundating anything from, say, southern and eastern Georgia all the way back up to the Delmarva Peninsula. But here's the interesting thing for right now. This storm system, if it wanders decently close to the coastline, this could go all the way up to around New York City. Now, it doesn't look like a huge problem for now, but it is something that really needs to be paid attention to, especially, again, if you are traveling. Doesn't look like much. Yes, in the short term and in the semi-long term, 30% chance of development is not all that huge. It's not like the higher chance that you saw in that system well off back to the east of us around Africa. But we're still in hurricane season, so now's the time to keep an eye on what's going on with that particular system as it makes its way up the coast. That again could be a bit of an issue out there. The waves around the coastline as this system goes up and develops, this is where we could see a development. Note that light blue color. Let me run that back again so you can see that. Starts off as being darker blue with not much going on, and then heavier amounts of waves start to develop right along the Carolina coast as that spin starts to shove that water up toward the coastline. And we start to see some pretty good amounts of wave activity again right in that area from outer banks of North Carolina through northeastern areas of Georgia, so and Florida too. So this could shove a lot of water up along the coast. What does that mean? All that water being pushed up on the beach has to go someplace, and sometimes that water gets pulled back out again. That's a lot of water, and water is a great big force of mass in motion when you get a bunch of it on there. About the size of a washing machine, roughly a meter squared, give or take, is about a ton of water. That's a lot, 55 times denser than air. And that water has got to go someplace. So if it gets pushed up this direction, as it flows away, you're on the beach, you're out there sailing or swimming, it's a good possibility that you could get caught in what's called a rip current that could pull you out farther into the water, quarter mile even, larger than that, depending on how strong the grip of the rip is. So now's the time to educate yourself about that and maybe think about postponing that beach trip just to be on the safe side. We'll continue to watch this situation as it goes, but for right now, the worst of the worst is that we may see again some heavy rain, some gusty winds, and maybe some big surf, and that could lead to riptides. So let's be very careful out there while we're watching everything go on through. When nothing is going on, that's the perfect time to program your weather radio. Go to wdef.com/weather, and we can help you program your weather radio so you can get the right counties, the right warnings, advisories, etc. It's a very useful tool, a life-saving piece of equipment. Get it programmed. Let us help you. Go to our website for more information on that. Once again, teachers and administrators, if you'd like to have us in your classroom, that's great, but you have to invite us. So please go to the Food City Weather in the Classroom program for more information on that. And you can find out more details again at wdef.com/weather to find out more about what's going on and how we can give us your name, school, contact information, email, especially handy. What grade level we're going to be talking to. Kindergarten is much different than a high school presentation, and we'll tell you a little bit more about what we're able to offer in that particular area. So please give us an update on that, again, at the Food City Weather in the Classroom program. For tonight, I think that's pretty much it. Everything's decently quiet, and we're not seeing a major problem for tonight and into tomorrow morning. We'll have more details on your complete forecast with Chip Chapman. He'll be coming up bright and early at 5 a.m., so stay tuned for more there. And, of course, I'll have more details on the forecast coming up later on tomorrow afternoon and evening. As always, the forecast available on our website at wdef.com/weather, and you can find me on all of these other social media pages as well. Find out more about the great Central U.S. Shakeout at shakeout.org. And again, keep it tuned to News 12 for more information on what's coming our way when it comes to countdowns and timeouts and things like that. We'll let you know more about that going on in the next several days. I'm Chief Meteorologist Austin Onek. You've been watching Weather Overtime on Facebook and Twitch TV. Thanks for joining us for tonight, and stay tuned for much more. I'll be on with Andrew Harrison at 11. Rick Nyman has sports. And again, Chip Chapman has your forecast, along with Dave Staley and Kay Blevins tomorrow morning starting at 5 a.m. Thanks for joining us. This has been Weather Overtime for Monday, the 18th of September. Stay tuned for more with News 12 on air and online, and thanks for joining us.